war was over. The rebel forces had fallen. Yuna stood among the ruins of what used to be a fortress, her silver skin covered in dust and blood. She was a warrior of the Kael'tar Empire, trained since childhood to fight without question. Her blade had never failed her. Her loyalty had never wavered. Today should have been her greatest victory. The transport ship arrived to take her back to the capital. Yuna climbed aboard with her unit, exhausted but proud. They had saved the Empire from chaos. They had protected their people. She expected medals, honors, perhaps even a promotion to the High Council's personal guard. The ship landed at the capital spaceport. Soldiers waited at the bottom of the ramp. Not honor guards. Arrest troops. Their weapons were raised and pointed directly at her. Yuna of the 3rd Legion, the commander announced, his voice cold and official. You are under arrest for war crimes against civilian populations. You are charged with the massacre of innocent lives during the Vralith campaign. The words hit her harder than any weapon. Yuna's mind went blank with shock. Massacre, innocent lives? She had followed every rule of engagement. She had protected civilians whenever possible. This made no sense. There must be a mistake, she said, her voice steady despite the confusion raging inside her. I followed all protocols. I saved civilians. Wait, we have evidence, another voice interrupted. Commander Tavik stepped forward from the shadows. Her mentor, the warrior who had trained her for 15 years. The one she trusted more than anyone in the galaxy. He would not meet her eyes. Video recordings, he continued. Witness testimonies, bodies, the evidence is clear, Yuna. You slaughtered hundreds during the siege of Korath City. That's impossible. Yuna's hand moved to her weapon by instinct, but strong hands grabbed her from behind. 3 soldiers held her arms, forcing them behind her back. Cold metal restraints locked around her wrists. I was never at Korath City during the siege, she protested, struggling against the guards. My unit was stationed at the Eastern Front 50 kilometers away. You know this, Tavik. You gave me those orders yourself. Tavik finally looked at her. His expression was empty, like she was already dead to him. The council has reviewed the evidence. Your trial will be in 3 days. Until then, you will be held in the high-security prison. They dragged her away. Yuna saw her battle sisters watching from a distance. Warriors she had fought beside for years. Sisters who had shared blood and bonds on countless battlefields. Not one of them stepped forward to defend her. Not one of them questioned the charges. They simply watched as she was taken away like a criminal. The prison cell was small and dark. Yuna sat on the cold metal bench, her mind racing. None of this made sense. She had never been to Korath City during the siege. The massacre had happened on the 3rd day of the attack. She had been nowhere near that location. Someone was lying. Someone had created false evidence, but why? Who would gain from her destruction? 3 days felt like 3 years. On the morning of her trial, guards came to transport her. But something was wrong. There were too many of them, and they moved with unusual tension. As they walked through the prison corridors, Yuna noticed they were taking a different route. Not toward the trial chambers. Toward the execution yards. Where are you taking me? She demanded. The trial hasn't happened yet. The lead guard glanced back at her. For just a moment, she saw pity in his eyes. There won't be a trial. Orders changed. You're to be executed immediately. Understanding crashed over her like ice water. This was never about justice. This was an assassination dressed up as legal procedure. Someone on the High Council wanted her dead, and they were using false charges to make it happen. Yuna had perhaps 30 seconds before they reached the execution yard. After that, she would die. Not in honorable combat, not defending her people, but as a convicted war criminal, her name forever stained with crimes she did not commit. She could not let that happen. When they turned the next corner, Yuna moved. Her hands were still bound, but her legs were free. She dropped low and swept the legs of the guard behind her. He fell hard. She rolled, bringing her bound hands under her feet so they were now in front of her body. The other guards shouted and reached for their weapons. Yuna grabbed the fallen guard's shock baton and slammed it into the nearest soldier's chest. He convulsed and dropped. She ducked under a plasma bolt that scorched the wall behind her, then drove her shoulder into another guard's stomach. He crashed into his companion and both went down. The last guard was faster. He grabbed her from behind, trying to restrain her. Yuna threw her head back, connecting with his face. Bones crunched. His grip loosened. She spun and struck him in the throat with her bound wrists. He fell gasping, 5 guards down in 10 seconds. Yuna's training had not failed her. She grabbed a plasma pistol from one of the unconscious soldiers and ran. Alarms began wailing throughout the prison. She had minutes at most before the entire security force descended on her location. She knew the prison layout from her training days. Every warrior had to learn it in case they were ever captured by enemies. Yuna sprinted through maintenance corridors and service tunnels, avoiding the main passages where guards would be converging. Her bound wrist made everything harder, but she pushed through the pain. The hangar bay was her only chance. If she could steal a ship, any ship, she might escape the planet. After that, she had no idea. She would be a fugitive, hunted by her own people. Everything she had ever known would be gone, but she would be alive. And while she lived, she could find the truth. The hangar was chaos. Ships were taking off as security forces mobilized to search for her. Yuna spotted a small scout vessel at the edge of the bay, its engines already warming up for a patrol flight. She sprinted toward it, firing her stolen weapon at the guards who tried to intercept her. She reached the ship and scrambled up the boarding ramp. The pilot inside barely had time to register her presence before she struck him unconscious with the butt of her pistol. She sealed the hatch and threw herself into the pilot's seat. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. The ship's systems were not fully initialized. The navigation computer was still running startup protocols. Yuna did not care. She grabbed the flight controls and fired the engines. The scout vessel lurched upward, scraping against the hangar ceiling before shooting out into the open sky. Plasma fire erupted around her as defense turrets targeted her stolen ship. Yuna pushed the throttle to maximum and climbed toward orbit. The ship shuddered under multiple hits. Hull breach warnings screamed at her. Oxygen levels were dropping. The navigation system flickered and died, damaged by the weapons fire. She cleared the atmosphere and jumped to faster-than-light speed without calculating a destination. The ship could end up anywhere in the galaxy. She might fly into a star or a black hole, but anywhere was better than staying to die for crimes she did not commit. As the stars stretched into lines around her viewport, Yuna allowed herself one moment of grief. Her life was over. Her honor was destroyed. Her people had betrayed her. Everything she had fought for was gone. The damaged ship hurtled through unknown space, carrying a broken warrior toward an uncertain fate. The ship screamed as it entered the atmosphere. Yuna fought with the controls, but nothing responded. The navigation system was dead. Life support was failing. The hull was breaching in 3 different sections. She was going to crash, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Through the viewport, she saw a planet below, blue and green and white, beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. She had seen hundreds of worlds in her military service, but something about this one felt different. Peaceful, quiet. The ship hit the upper atmosphere and began to shake violently. Fire engulfed the view screen. Yuna strapped herself into the pilot's seat and braced for impact. If she survived the crash, she would be stranded on an unknown world with no way to call for help. If the planet was inhabited, its people might be hostile. If it was uninhabited, she would die slowly from exposure or starvation. Either way, her story was ending here. The ground rushed up to meet her. Mountains covered in green forests. She saw a clearing ahead and tried to aim for it, but the ship was barely responding. They hit the treetops first, branches tearing at the hull. Then the ground, hard and unforgiving. The ship bounced once, twice, then plowed through dirt and rocks before finally coming to rest against a massive boulder. Everything went dark. When Yuna opened her eyes again, pain consumed her entire body. She tasted blood. Her left arm was broken. Her ribs were cracked. Something sharp had cut deep into her side, and silver blood was pooling beneath her. She tried to move, but her body would not obey. The cockpit had collapsed partially. Smoke filled the air. She needed to get out before the ship's reactor exploded. With her one good arm, Yuna dragged herself toward the emergency hatch. Every movement sent waves of agony through her body. Her vision kept going dark around the edges. She hit the hatch release. Nothing happened. She hit it again harder. The mechanism was jammed. Yuna wanted to scream in frustration, but she barely had enough breath to stay conscious. She was going to die here, trapped in this broken ship on an unknown world. After everything she had survived, this was how it would end. Then she heard a sound outside. Footsteps. Something was approaching the crash site. Yuna's hand went to her weapon, but it was gone, lost somewhere in the crash. She was helpless. If whatever was out there was hostile, she could not fight. She could barely move. The footsteps stopped just outside the hatch. There was a moment of silence. Then metal scraped against metal as something tried to open the door from the outside. Una held her breath. The hatch groaned and slowly began to move. Light poured in, blinding her after the darkness of the cockpit. A face appeared in the opening. A native of this world. His features were alien to her but somehow familiar. 2 eyes like her people, a nose and mouth. Hair black as the space between stars. His skin was different though, not silver like hers, but a warm tan color. He looked young, perhaps 30 cycles by Kael'tar standards. He stared at her with wide eyes, clearly shocked by what he was seeing. Una waited for him to run away screaming or to attack her. Instead, he said something in a language she did not understand. His tone was not aggressive. It sounded almost concerned. He reached toward her. Una tried to pull away, but her body would not respond. His hands touched her shoulder, gentle and careful. He was examining her wounds. She realized with surprise that he was trying to help her. "Stay back," she managed to say in her own language. The words came out weak and broken. "Dangerous. I am dangerous." He did not understand her words, but he seemed to understand her distress. He held up his hands in a gesture that looked like surrender or peace. Then he pointed to himself and said, "Doyon, a name." He was telling her his name. Una stared at him, confused. Why would an alien native tell his name to a crashed warrior? Why was he not afraid? "Una," she whispered back, too tired to maintain her guard. Doyon nodded as if they had made some kind of agreement. He carefully climbed into the cockpit and assessed her injuries. His face grew serious when he saw the wound in her side. He said something urgent in his language, then gently lifted her in his arms. Una wanted to protest, to fight, to maintain her dignity as a warrior. But consciousness was slipping away again. The last thing she remembered was the feeling of being carried through the forest, the stranger's arms steady and strong, and the strange sensation that maybe somehow she was safe. She woke in a bed. Not a military cot or a prison bench, but an actual bed with soft covers and a pillow beneath her head. Confusion flooded her mind. Where was she? How long had she been unconscious? Una tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain exploded through her torso. She looked down and saw bandages wrapped around her midsection, and her broken arm splinted and secured. Someone had treated her wounds. Someone had cared for her. The room was small and simple. Wooden walls and floor. A window showing mountains and forests outside. Shelves filled with books and strange objects she did not recognize. Everything felt warm and lived in. So different from the cold metal spaces of Kael'tar ships and buildings. "You are awake." Una's head snapped toward the voice. Doyon stood in the doorway holding a tray with food and water. He was not armed. Not wearing armor. Just simple clothes that looked comfortable and practical. He approached slowly, carefully, like someone approaching a wounded animal that might bite. He set the tray on a small table beside the bed and stepped back, giving her space. Una's training screamed at her to be suspicious, to assess him as a potential threat, to plan her escape. But he had saved her life. He had treated her wounds. He had given her his own bed, apparently, because she could see no other sleeping place in this small dwelling. "Where am I?" she asked, knowing he would not understand. Her translation device had been on her belt, and she had no idea where that was now. Doyon seemed to recognize that she was asking a question. He pointed down, then gestured broadly at the room and outside. He said a word that sounded like Earth or something close to it. The planet's name, probably. Earth. Una searched her memory of galactic records but found nothing. This world was not part of the Empire, not part of any known civilization as far as she knew. She was truly alone here, light years from anyone who knew her name or her story. For the first time since her betrayal, Una felt tears burn in her eyes. Not tears of pain, but of overwhelming loss. Everything was gone. Her people, her honor, her purpose. She was stranded on an alien world, broken and hunted, with nowhere to go and no one to turn to, except this stranger, who had asked for nothing and given everything. Doyon must have seen something in her face because his expression softened. He said something in a quiet voice, words she could not understand but whose tone was unmistakable. Kindness, compassion, a promise that she was not alone. He pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. not crowding her but near enough that his presence was felt. Then he did something that surprised Yuna more than anything else that had happened. He simply waited. He did not demand explanations. He did not ask for payment or loyalty. He just sat there keeping watch, letting her know that someone was there if she needed help. In the Kaltar Empire, everything was transactional. Loyalty was owed to superiors. Service was expected from inferiors. Trust had to be earned through blood and combat. But this human, this Doyun, offered something Yuna had never experienced before. He offered help without conditions, kindness without expectations. She did not understand it, but as exhaustion pulled her back toward sleep, Yuna found herself hoping she would have time to learn. 3 weeks passed slowly in Doyun's mountain cabin. Yuna's wounds healed faster than any human injury would, but slower than they should have. The poison her betrayers had used was still in her system, fighting against her body's natural recovery. Each day brought a little more strength, but also the reminder that she was not at full capacity. She learned the rhythm of this place. Doyun woke with the sun and made breakfast, simple food that tasted better than the nutrition packs she had eaten for years. He would leave for a few hours to work on something outside, always telling her where he was going with gestures and simple words. He would return in the afternoon, make lunch and spend the evening reading or fixing things around the cabin. He never pressured her to talk, never demanded answers about who she was or where she came from. He simply existed beside her, giving space when she needed it and offering quiet company when she did not want to be alone. Yuna found her translation device in a box of salvaged items from her ship. It was damaged but functional. She spent 2 days repairing it with the limited tools available. When it finally activated, the first thing she heard was Doyun speaking in the other room. The device processed his language and translated it into words she could understand. "I hope the soup is okay," he was saying to himself as he cooked. "I am not sure what aliens eat. Maybe she is vegetarian, or maybe she only eats meat. I should have asked, but how do you ask someone when you cannot speak their language?" Yuna felt something strange in her chest. Warmth, amusement. This human was worried about what to feed her, as if that was the most important problem in the world. Not that she was an alien, not that she could be dangerous, just whether she would like the soup. She walked into the main room, moving carefully on legs that were still recovering. Doyun looked up from the stove and smiled. It was a simple expression, but genuine. No fear, no suspicion. Just happiness that she was feeling well enough to walk around. "I can understand you now," Yuna said. Her words translated by the device into his language. "The device works." "And yes, the soup smells good." Doyun's eyes widened. He stared at the small translator device on her wrist, then back at her face. "You can understand me." "And I can understand you?" "Yes," he laughed, a sound of pure delight. "That is amazing." "I have so many questions. But first, sit down. You should not be standing for too long yet." They sat together at his small wooden table. The soup was simple but delicious, made from vegetables grown in his garden and herbs from the forest. As they ate, they began to really talk for the first time. "Why did you help me?" Yuna asked. "You found an alien warrior crashed in your mountains. Most people would have run away or called their authorities. But you brought me here. You cared for me. Why?" Doyun was quiet for a moment, stirring his soup. "I was a medic in the military," he said finally. "Years ago. I saw a lot of injured people. And I learned that when someone is hurt, you help them. It does not matter who they are or where they come from. You just help." "That is not how my people think," Yuna said quietly. "In the Kaltar Empire, everything is about hierarchy and purpose. You help those above you because you must. You help those below you only if it benefits you. There is no concept of helping someone just because they need it." "That sounds lonely," Doyun observed. The word struck Yuna like a physical blow. Lonely. Was that what her life had been? She had battle sisters and unit members. She had commanders and subordinates. But had she ever had friends? Had anyone ever cared about her as a person rather than as a warrior or a tool? "Yes," she whispered. "It was lonely. I just never realized it until now." Over the following days, they talked more. Yuna told him about the Kaltar Empire, about being raised in training facilities from childhood, about never knowing her birth parents because family bonds were considered weaknesses. She told him about the war, the victory, and the betrayal that followed. She described the false charges and the attempt to execute her. Doyen listened to everything without judgment. When she finished, he simply said, "I am sorry that happened to you. You deserved better." No one had ever said that to her before. In her culture, you got what you earned through strength and service. Fairness was not a factor, but Doyen spoke of deserving better, as if she had inherent value beyond her usefulness as a warrior. "What about you?" Yuna asked. "You live alone in these mountains, far from other humans." "Why?" Doyen's expression darkened. He looked out the window at the forest. "I told you I was a medic. What I did not tell you is that I failed. My unit was ambushed during a mission. I tried to save them, but there were too many wounded and not enough time. I had to choose who to treat first. I chose wrong. 3 of my friends died because I could not save them fast enough." "That was not your fault," Yuna said. "You were in an impossible situation." "I know that up here," Doyen tapped his head. "But not here." He touched his chest. "So I left the military. I came to the mountains where I could not fail anyone else. I became a guide for hikers sometimes, but mostly I just live quietly. Alone. Lonely," Yuna said, echoing his earlier word. Doyen met her eyes and smiled sadly. "Yes, lonely." They sat in comfortable silence. 2 broken people from different worlds, both carrying guilt and pain, both hiding in the mountains from the lives they used to have. The nightmares started that night. Yuna woke screaming, her body tangled in the blankets, her silver skin slick with sweat. In her dream, she was back in the courtroom that never happened, watching as they convicted her of crimes she did not commit. Her battle sisters turned away, and Tavik's empty eyes stared through her like she was already dead. Doyen appeared in the doorway within seconds, a lamp in his hand. "Yuna, are you okay?" She was shaking. She hated that he was seeing her like this, weak and afraid. Warriors did not have nightmares. Warriors did not break down. But she was not really a warrior anymore, was she? She was just a fugitive with nowhere to go. "Bad dream," she managed to say. "About the trial. About my people." Doyen set down the lamp and sat on the edge of the bed, careful to give her space. "Do you want to talk about it?" "I keep seeing their faces," Yuna whispered. "The warriors I fought beside. They all believed the lies. Not one of them defended me. After everything we went through together, they just watched as they took me away. Betrayal hurts more when it comes from people we trust," Doyen said quietly. "I know. After my unit died, the military investigated me. They cleared me of wrongdoing. But I saw the doubt in people's eyes. They wondered if I could have saved more, if I had tried hard enough. Eventually, I started wondering the same thing. How did you survive it?" Yuna asked. "The doubt, the guilt, the loneliness? Honestly, I did not really. I am still surviving it. Some days are better than others. But having you here, talking to someone who understands what it feels like to lose everything, it helps. Maybe we are surviving it together now." Yuna looked at him, this strange human who had become the only constant in her shattered life. "I do not understand humans. In my empire, showing weakness is dangerous. But you show me your scars and your pain like it is something normal." "It is normal," Doyen said. "Being hurt, being scared, having regrets, that is just part of being alive. We all have scars, Yuna. The question is whether we let them define us or whether we learn from them and grow. I was taught that warriors do not grow. We are forged young and remain the same until we die in battle. Well, you are not in your empire anymore. Here you can be whatever you want to be. Warrior, survivor, or just Yuna. Just Yuna. She had never been just herself before. She had always been a soldier, a weapon, a tool of the empire. But sitting here in the soft lamplight, with Doyen's calm presence beside her, she wondered what it would be like to be simply a person. "Not defined by her training or her duties, but by her own choices, will you stay?" she asked quietly. "Just for a while, until I can sleep again." "Of course," Doyen said. He settled into the chair beside the bed, the same chair he had used during her first days of recovery. "I am not going anywhere." Yuna lay back down, pulling the blankets close. She kept her eyes on Doyen, watching as he picked up a book and began to read by lamplight. The nightmare's terror slowly faded, replaced by something she had not felt in a very long time. Safety. Peace. The knowledge that someone was watching over her, not because they had to, but because they chose to, because they cared. As sleep claimed her again, Yuna's last thought was that maybe, just maybe, she was starting to understand what it meant to be human. Spring came to the mountains with warm winds and blooming flowers. Yuna watched the transformation from the cabin's porch, fascinated by how quickly the world could change. In the Empire, most habitable planets were kept in controlled climates. Seasons were inefficient, they said. Better to maintain constant conditions for maximum productivity. But there was something beautiful about the change, something that made her feel alive in a way she never had before. Her wounds were almost completely healed now. The poison had finally worked its way out of her system. She could move without pain, fight without limitation. Each morning she trained in the clearing behind the cabin, running through the combat forms she had learned as a child. Doyen sometimes watched from a distance, never interrupting but always there if she needed him. One afternoon as she finished her training, Doyen approached with a concerned expression. "We need to go into town tomorrow," he said. "Supplies are running low. Food, medicine, other necessities." Yuna felt her chest tighten with anxiety. She had been safe here in the mountains, isolated from the rest of this world. But going into a human settlement meant exposure, risk, the possibility of being discovered. "Is there no other way?" she asked. "Can you not go alone?" "I could," Doyen admitted. "But you have been here for 2 months, Yuna. You cannot hide forever. At some point you need to see more of this world than just my cabin." He was right, and she knew it. She had been avoiding the reality of her situation. She was stranded on Earth with no way to leave. If she was going to survive here, she needed to learn how to exist among humans. Hiding in the mountains was just another kind of prison. "Will it be dangerous?" she asked. "Not the way you mean," Doyen said. "The town is small and peaceful. But people will notice you. Your silver skin, your eyes, the way you move. We will need a story, and you will need to dress like a human." They spent the evening preparing. Doyen found clothes that would fit her, simple and practical. A long coat with a hood that she could pull up if needed. He coached her on human behavior, the small things that might give her away. How humans greeted each other, how they moved through crowds, the importance of smiling and making brief eye contact. "And if someone asks about your skin," Yuna asked, touching her silver arm. "We tell them it is a rare medical condition," Doyen said. "There are humans with unusual skin conditions. It will be strange, but not impossible. Most people will be too polite to ask directly anyway." That night, Yuna barely slept. She had faced enemy armies without fear, but the thought of walking through a human town terrified her. It was not fear of violence. It was fear of not belonging, of being exposed as something that did not fit in this world. The next morning, they set out early. The walk to town took 2 hours down the mountain path. Yuna kept her hood up and stayed close to Doyen. She studied everything around her with warrior's instincts, marking exits and potential threats but trying to look casual as Doyen had taught her. The town was small, just a few streets of shops and houses nestled in the valley, but to Yuna it was overwhelming. Humans everywhere going about their daily lives, children playing in a park, old people sitting on benches talking and laughing. The air smelled of food and flowers and something else she could not name. Life, maybe. Simple, ordinary life. "Relax," Doyen said quietly, noticing her tension. "You are safe here. Just follow my lead." They walked through the market first. Vendors sold fresh produce, handmade crafts, clothing, and tools. Doyen stopped at several stalls, buying vegetables and fruit. Yuna watched how he interacted with the sellers, the easy conversations and friendly bargaining. Everything was so casual, so different from the rigid transactions of the Empire. An elderly woman at a fruit stand noticed Yuna and smiled warmly. "Hello, dear," she said. "Are you new to town? I have not seen you before." Yuna froze, unsure how to respond. But the woman did not seem threatening, just curious and kind. "Yes," Yuna managed to say. "I am visiting." "With Doyen." "Ah, Doyen." The woman's smile grew wider. "It is good to see you bringing a friend around. You spend too much time alone in those mountains." She selected a particularly beautiful apple and handed it to Yuna. "Here, try this. Fresh picked this morning. No charge, welcome gift." Yuna took the apple, confused by the gesture. "Why do you give this to me?" "I have done nothing for you." The old woman laughed. "Do I need a reason to be kind?" "Enjoy it, dear. And come back soon." As they walked away, Yuna stared at the apple in her hand. "She just gave this to me. For nothing." "That is how it works here," Doyen said, smiling. "People help each other. They are kind because it makes the world a little better, not because they expect something in return." They continued through the market. A street musician played a guitar and people dropped coins into his open case. Children chased each other around the fountain, laughing. Two old men argued passionately about a game they had watched, but their argument was full of humor and friendship, not real anger. Yuna felt something break open inside her chest. This was what she had been fighting for all those years, she realized. Not the Empire's expansion or the High Council's power. This normal life. People living and loving and simply existing without fear or constant competition. This was what she had been told she was protecting, even though she had never been allowed to experience it herself. "Do-yun, is that really you?" A woman's voice called out from across the street. Yuna's hand instinctively moved toward where her weapon would have been, but Do-yun just turned and waved. A human woman approached them, young and bright-eyed with black hair and an energetic stride. "Hari," Do-yun greeted her with obvious affection. "It has been too long. Whose fault is that?" Hari scolded playfully. "You hide in your mountain cave and never visit. I was beginning to think you had become a hermit permanently." Her eyes shifted to Yuna, curious but not hostile. "And who is your friend?" "This is Yuna," Do-yun said, and Yuna noticed he did not elaborate on where she was from or how they met. "She is staying with me for a while." "Yuna, this is Hari. We grew up together. She runs the bookstore in town." "It is nice to meet you," Yuna said carefully, remembering Do-yun's coaching about human greetings. Hari studied her for a moment, and Yuna saw intelligence and perception in those eyes. This woman noticed things. Noticed that Yuna's skin was not quite right, that her movements were too precise, that her accent was strange despite the translator's best efforts. But whatever Hari suspected, she kept it to herself. "Nice to meet you too, Yuna. Any friend of Do-yun's is welcome here." Hari smiled genuinely. "You should both come to my bookstore. I just got a new shipment of books that Do-yun would love. And Yuna, I could teach you some Korean phrases if you are interested. Languages are a hobby of mine." "I would like that," Yuna said, and realized she meant it. This woman seemed kind and interesting, the type of person who might become a friend if Yuna allowed it. They spent an hour at Hari's bookstore, a cozy space filled with books floor to ceiling. Hari talked about stories and authors, recommending books to Do-yun and asking Yuna about what kinds of stories she liked. Yuna had never read for pleasure before. In the Empire, reading was for technical manuals and military strategy. The idea of reading just for enjoyment was foreign. "Start with this one," Hari said, handing her a book with a simple cover. "It is about a warrior who learns to become more than just a fighter. I think you might relate to it." Yuna took the book, touched by the thought behind the recommendation. "Thank you." As they left the bookstore and continued their shopping, Yuna felt lighter than she had in months. The town was not threatening. The humans were not hostile. They were just people, living their lives, and they had accepted her presence without question. But as they walked past a shop window, Yuna caught sight of something that made her blood freeze. In the reflection of the glass high above the town, she saw three metallic objects hovering in the clouds. They moved with purpose, scanning the area below. Not human technology, not even close. Drones. Kael'tar reconnaissance drones, or perhaps something worse. Bounty hunters use similar technology. Someone was looking for her, and they were getting close. Yuna forced herself to keep walking, to not react, to maintain the casual human behavior Do-yun had taught her. But inside, her warrior instincts were screaming. She had stayed in one place too long. She had gotten comfortable. She had started to believe she might actually have a chance at a normal life. That had been a mistake. As they walked back toward the mountain path, carrying their supplies, Yuna made a decision. She would not tell Do-yun about the drones. Not yet. He had given her so much, risked so much. She would not repay him by bringing danger to his doorstep. When the time came, when the hunters closed in, she would leave. She would lead them away from this town, away from these kind people, away from Do-yun. She would protect him the way he had protected her, even if it meant going back to being alone. Even if it meant saying goodbye to the first person who had ever made her feel like she mattered as something more than just a warrior. Even if it broke her heart to do it. That night, back at the cabin, Do-yun noticed her quiet mood. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I know today was overwhelming." "I am fine," Yuna lied. "Just tired. Thank you for taking me, for showing me your world. It is beautiful." "It is your world too now," Do-yun said softly. "For as long as you want to stay." Yuna smiled but said nothing. She could know Yuna barely slept that night. Every sound made her reach for weapons she no longer had. Every shadow outside the window could be an enemy. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, knowing that the peaceful life she had started to build was about to end. By dawn, she had made her decision. She packed her few belongings in silence, moving through the cabin like a ghost. The book Hari had given her, the simple clothes Doyun had provided, the small knife he had taught her to use for cooking. Everything that represented the life she could have had. She wrote a note in her own language first, then used the translator to convert it to Korean. The words felt inadequate, too small to contain everything she wanted to say. Doyun, thank you for showing me that kindness exists. Thank you for saving my life, not just from my wounds, but from believing I was nothing more than a weapon. I am leaving to protect you from what is coming. Please do not follow me. You gave me hope when I had none. That is a gift I can never repay. Be safe. Be happy. Remember me. Yuna. She left the note on the kitchen table, weighted down by the translation device. She would not need it anymore where she was going. Then she slipped out of the cabin into the pre-dawn darkness, heading toward the higher mountains where the drones had been scanning. If hunters were coming, she would make sure they found only her. Far away from anyone who might get caught in the crossfire. The mountain path was steep and rough. Yuna moved quickly, her fully healed body grateful for the exertion after weeks of relative inactivity. She covered ground fast, putting distance between herself and Doyun's cabin. With each step, her warrior training reasserted itself. She was not a refugee anymore. She was a soldier preparing for combat. This was familiar territory. By midday, she had reached a rocky valley between two peaks. Good defensive position, limited approaches, easy to spot enemies coming. This was where she would make her stand. If the hunters wanted her, they would have to come through terrain that favored a single skilled fighter over a group. She did not have to wait long. 3 figures descended from the sky using personal flight packs, landing in a triangle formation around her position. They were not Keltar warriors, bounty hunters as she had suspected. 2 males and 1 female wearing mismatched armor and carrying weapons from various worlds. Mercenaries who cared only about the price on her head. The leader was a male with scarred face and cold eyes. He studied her with the expression of someone evaluating merchandise. Yuna of the 3rd Legion, he called out. You have led us on quite a chase. But it ends now. The bounty on your head is substantial. You can come peacefully, or we can take you by force. Either way, you are coming with us. I am not going anywhere, Yuna said, falling into a fighting stance despite having no weapon. If you want me, you will have to take me. The leader, whose name she would later learn was Vex, smiled without humor. We hoped you would say that. Makes it more fun. They attacked simultaneously. Yuna dodged the first barrage of energy blasts using the rocks for cover. She was unarmed against 3 equipped mercenaries. The odds were terrible, but she had trained her entire life for impossible situations. She grabbed a loose rock and threw it with precise force, striking one mercenary's weapon and knocking it from his grip. Before he could recover, she was on him, using his own body as a shield against his companions. A quick strike to his throat dropped him, and Yuna claimed his weapon. Now armed, the fight became more even. She fired back at the hunters, forcing them to take cover. The valley echoed with the sounds of combat. Energy weapons scorched the rocks. Yuna moved constantly, never staying in one position, using every trick her training had taught her. But she was still outnumbered. And these hunters were professionals. They adapted quickly to her tactics, working together to pin her down. Vex flanked her position while the female mercenary provided covering fire. Yuna took a hit to her shoulder, the energy blast burning through her coat and searing her skin. She stumbled, pain momentarily breaking her focus. Vex was on her immediately, striking her wounded shoulder and forcing her to drop the weapon. She fought back with hands and feet, but he was strong and experienced. His fist connected with her ribs, then her face. She tasted blood. This was it. She was going to lose. After everything, after finding hope and peace and maybe even love, she was going to be captured by mercenaries and sold to whoever paid the most. Everything she had run from would catch up to her. Then she heard a sound that should not have been possible. A crack of gunfire. Human gunfire. One of the mercenaries cried out as a bullet struck his armor. Vex turned, distracted, and Yuna saw Doyun running toward them from higher up the valley, a hunting rifle in his hands. He was firing as he ran, his shots precise and calculated despite the difficult angle. "No!" Yuna screamed. "Get away from here! Run!" But Doyun did not run. He took cover behind a boulder and continued firing, his bullets forcing the mercenaries to split their attention. It was not enough to seriously hurt them through their armor, but it was enough to disrupt their coordination. Yuna used the distraction to kick Vex away from her and recover the dropped weapon. She fired at the female mercenary, hitting her flight pack. The pack exploded, sending the woman crashing to the ground. 2 down, 2 to go. Doyun's rifle clicked empty. He was out of ammunition. Vex realized it immediately and turned toward him, raising his plasma weapon. Yuna's heart stopped. If that weapon fired, Doyun would die instantly. No armor, no protection, just flesh and bone against military-grade firepower. She did not think. She just moved. Yuna threw herself between Doyun and Vex, her own body becoming the shield. The plasma blast meant for Doyun hit her instead, burning through her side. The pain was immense, worse than anything she had felt in the crash. But she stayed standing, weapon raised, firing back. Her shot caught Vex in the chest. His armor held, but the impact knocked him backward. The remaining mercenary decided the bounty was not worth dying for. He activated his flight pack and retreated, dragging his injured companions with him. Within seconds they were gone, disappearing into the clouds. Silence fell over the valley. Yuna swayed on her feet, the adrenaline fading and leaving only pain in its wake. She looked down at the wound in her side. Bad, but not fatal if treated quickly. She had survived worse. Then she turned to Doyun, who was climbing out from behind the boulder. Anger and relief and love all crashed over her at once. "You followed me," she said, her voice shaking. "I told you not to follow me." "You left," Doyun shot back, his own voice tight with emotion. "Without explanation, without goodbye, just a note. Did you really think I would let you go that easily?" "I was protecting you," Yuna shouted, and now tears were streaming down her face. "They were hunting me. I could not let you get hurt because of me. I could not—" Her voice broke. "I have already lost everything. I could not lose you too." Doyun crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, careful of her wound. "You are not losing me," he said fiercely. "Not to hunters, not to empires, not to anything, do you understand? We face this together or not at all." Yuna buried her face in his shoulder, her body shaking with sobs. All the emotion she had been holding back, all the fear and loneliness and desperate hope came pouring out. "I do not deserve you," she whispered. "I am a broken warrior with no honor and no home. You should have let me go." "Stop," Doyun said, pulling back to look at her face. His hands framed her cheeks, gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. "You are not broken. You are not worthless. You are Yuna, and you are exactly where you are supposed to be." She stared at him through tears, seeing the absolute certainty in his expression. This human, who had saved her life and asked for nothing in return, who had shown her kindness when she expected none, who had followed her into danger without hesitation because he cared about her, not about what she could do for him. "I love you," Yuna said, the words coming out raw and honest. "I do not know if that is allowed or if it makes sense or if we can even have a future together, but I love you, Doyun. I think I have loved you since the moment you carried me out of that crashed ship." Doyun's expression softened into something beautiful. "I love you too," he said simply. "And we will figure out the rest as we go." He kissed her then, gentle and careful, mindful of her injuries but conveying everything words could not. Yuna kissed him back, pouring all her hope and fear and love into that moment. 2 broken souls from different worlds, finding in each other exactly what they needed. When they finally pulled apart, Doyun looked at her wound with his medic's eye. We need to get you back to the cabin. That needs treatment immediately. They will come back, Yuna said. More of them. Better prepared. We cannot stay at your cabin. It is not safe anymore. Then we will make it safe, Doyen said firmly. We will prepare. We will get help. But we will do it together, Yuna. No more running away to protect me. We are a team now, partners. Do you understand? Yuna nodded, fresh tears spilling over. But these were different tears, not of grief or fear, but of overwhelming gratitude. She had thought she was alone in the universe. She had thought her story would end with betrayal and death. But somehow, impossibly, she had found someone who saw past. The next morning, Hari arrived at the cabin with supplies and 3 men Yuna did not recognize. Doyen had called her the previous night after treating Yuna's wound, explaining the situation in terms that somehow made alien bounty hunters sound almost reasonable. To Yuna's surprise, Hari had not questioned the story. She had simply asked what they needed. These are friends of Doyen from his military days, Hari explained as the men unloaded equipment from a truck. Jinwoo, Quan, and Taemin. They owe Doyen their lives. When he called and said he needed help, they came. No questions asked. The 3 former soldiers greeted Yuna with cautious respect. They looked at her silver skin and unusual eyes with curiosity but not fear. Doyen had clearly explained at least part of her situation. Jinwoo, the oldest of the 3, studied the cabin and surrounding terrain with a tactical eye. This position is defensible, he said. Good sight lines, limited approaches, forest on 3 sides. If your hunters come back, we can make them regret it. They will come back, Yuna confirmed. The bounty on my head is too valuable. Vex will bring reinforcements, better weapons. They will not make the same mistakes twice. Then we will be ready, Quan said simply. He was younger, with sharp eyes and quick movements. Show us what we are dealing with. Yuna spent the day teaching them about Kael'tar technology and hunter tactics. She drew diagrams in the dirt explaining plasma weapons and personal shields, flight packs and scanning equipment. The humans absorbed the information quickly, adapting their own military training to account for superior technology. Technology is powerful, Taemin observed. He was the quietest of the 3, but Yuna noticed he thought deeply before speaking. But tactics and terrain can level the advantage. We have both here. They fortified the cabin throughout the day, trenches dug at strategic points, tripwires strung between trees, supplies stockpiled. Jinwoo had brought explosives, military surplus he claimed to have legally obtained, though his smile suggested otherwise. They placed charges at key locations where attackers would likely approach. Yuna worked alongside them, her warrior training meshing surprisingly well with human military doctrine. They fought differently than Kael'tar warriors, using coordination and cover rather than individual glory and frontal assault. It was effective, practical, and built on trust between unit members. As evening fell, Hari pulled Yuna aside while the men continued preparations. I know this is not my business, Hari said carefully, but I have known Doyen since we were children. I have never seen him this way. He looks at you like you are the most important thing in the universe. Yuna felt heat rise to her cheeks, an embarrassment response she had learned from humans. I do not understand it either, she admitted. In my culture, love is considered a weakness. Attachment makes warriors vulnerable, but with him I feel stronger. Like I can face anything as long as he is beside me. That is what love should be, Hari said with a gentle smile. Not weakness, but strength multiplied. 2 people making each other better. She paused, then added, whatever happens tomorrow, know that you are not alone. We humans are strange like that. We protect our own, even when our own includes silver-skinned alien warriors. Why? Yuna asked. You barely know me. You are risking your life for someone from another world. Because you matter to Doyen and Doyen matters to us. And honestly, Hari's smile turned mischievous. Because the idea of bounty hunters thinking they can just come to our planet and take people against their will makes me angry. This is Earth. We decide who stays and who goes. That night, Yuna and Doyen sat together on the cabin porch while the others slept in shifts. The mountains were peaceful, stars bright overhead. It was hard to believe that tomorrow would bring violence, I'm afraid. Yuna admitted quietly. Not of dying. I have faced death many times. But of failing. Of not being strong enough to protect you and the others. Doyen took her hand, his fingers lacing with hers. You do not have to protect us alone, he said. We are all in this together. That is the difference between you now and the warrior you used to be. You are not fighting alone anymore. In the Empire, we were taught that depending on others is weakness, that a true warrior stands alone. Your empire sounds exhausting, Doyen said with a slight smile. Humans learned long ago that we are stronger together. Our bodies are not the strongest. Our senses are not the sharpest. But we cooperate, we adapt, and we protect each other. That is what makes us dangerous. Yuna rested her head on his shoulder, breathing in his scent of wood smoke and mountain air. I am glad I crashed here, she said. I am glad I found you. I am glad too, Doyen replied. Even with alien bounty hunters about to attack. Even with all the danger, I am glad you are here. They sat in silence, holding each other, drawing strength from their connection. Tomorrow would bring battle. Tonight they had peace. The hunters arrived at dawn, just as Yuna had predicted. Not 3 this time, but 7. Vex had brought reinforcements and better equipment. They descended from the sky in formation, plasma rifles ready, personal shields shimmering around them. Yuna watched from cover, her commandeered weapon in hand. Beside her, Doyen and the others waited with calm discipline. The hunters landed in the clearing in front of the cabin, arrogant in their superior numbers and technology. Yuna, Vex called out. We know you are here. We tracked your energy signature. Come out peacefully and we will spare the humans helping you. Resist and we kill everyone. Yuna stepped out from behind cover, weapon raised. You should have stayed away, Vex. This is my home now. These are my people, and I will die before I let you take me. So be it, Vex said, and signaled his hunters to attack. The battle erupted in chaos. The hunters advanced, expecting easy targets. Instead, they hit the first tripwire. Explosions rocked the clearing, throwing 2 mercenaries off their feet. Their shields protected them from serious injury, but disrupted their formation. Jinwoo opened fire from the tree line, his shots coordinated with Quan's from the opposite side. The hunters returned fire, plasma bolts scorching trees. But the defenders were dug in, using cover effectively, making themselves difficult targets. Yuna engaged Vex directly, her movements fluid and deadly. They exchanged fire, neither gaining advantage. But Yuna was not trying to win alone. She was hurting him, pushing him toward where Taemin waited with a large caliber rifle. The shot took Vex in the knee, a joint where his armor was weakest. He went down hard. 2 hunters flanked toward the cabin. Doyen emerged from concealment and threw a homemade explosive. It detonated at their feet, the blast knocking them backward. Not military grade, but effective. Harry followed up with covering fire, driving them back. The battle raged for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The hunters had better weapons, but the defenders had better positioning and teamwork. Every time a mercenary advanced, they hit traps or crossfire. Every time they tried to use their flight packs to gain altitude advantage, coordinated shooting forced them back down. Gradually, the tide turned. One hunter retreated with critical injuries. Then another. Vex, wounded and frustrated, realized he was losing. His remaining mercenaries looked uncertain, their confidence shaken. This is not worth the bounty, one of them shouted. She has an army. We are leaving, Vex growled, triggering his flight pack despite his injured leg. But this is not over, Yuna. More will come. The bounty is too high. Let them come, Yuna called back. I will be ready. The hunters retreated into the sky, leaving their wounded behind. Silence fell over the battlefield. Smoke rose from scorched earth and damaged trees. But the cabin still stood. Everyone was alive, some injured but none critically. Jinwoo appeared from the tree line, grinning despite the burn on his arm. Well, that was exciting. Do you attract this much attention everywhere you go? Apparently, Yuna said, allowing herself a small smile. They spent the rest of the day treating wounds and securing the captured mercenaries. The hunters had been defeated, but Vex's words haunted Yuna. More would come. The bounty would attract more hunters, more dangerous ones. This was not over. That evening, as they gathered around the cabin for a meal Hari had somehow managed to prepare despite the day's chaos, Yuna stood to address them all. You risked your lives for me today, she said. Humans you barely knew. Fighting technology you did not understand. You did this because Doyen asked and because you believed it was right. In my entire life as a warrior, I never experienced anything like this. My people would call it foolish, illogical, but it is the most honorable thing I have ever witnessed. So what happens now? Quan asked. More hunters will come. We cannot defend this place forever. Yuna looked at Doyen, then at the others. An idea had been forming in her mind, dangerous and ambitious. We do not just defend, she said. We offer sanctuary. There are others like me out there. Warriors betrayed by their empires. Refugees fleeing war. People with nowhere to go. What if we gave them somewhere to come? Here, on Earth, in these mountains. A sanctuary for alien refugees. Jinwoo raised his eyebrows. That is ambitious. Also probably illegal. I love it. It would be dangerous, Hari pointed out, drawing attention from multiple alien factions. The human government might not appreciate it either. Let them disapprove, Taemin said quietly. Doing what is right. 6 months passed like water flowing down the mountain. The cabin that had once housed only Doyen now served as the center of something much larger. Around it, new structures took shape. Simple dwellings built into the mountainside, designed to blend with the forest and avoid detection from above. The first refugee arrived 3 months after the battle. Her name was Lyra, a young female from the Korthan systems. She had fled after refusing to participate in her government's genocide against a neighboring species. Yuna found her collapsed at the edge of the forest, starving and injured. She brought her to the cabin and Doyen treated her wounds while Hari prepared food. You are safe here, Yuna told Lyra in the trader language most species understood. No one will force you to fight. No one will judge you for choosing peace over war. Lyra had cried then, great heaving sobs of relief. I thought I was the only one, she whispered. I thought I was broken because I could not kill anymore. You are not broken, Yuna said firmly. You are brave. It takes more courage to choose peace than to follow orders. Word spread slowly through the refugee networks that existed in the shadows of galactic civilization. Earth, they whispered. The blue planet, where a betrayed warrior had found sanctuary and now offered it to others, where humans, despite their primitive technology, had fought off bounty hunters to protect aliens they barely knew. More came. Never many at once, always carefully to avoid detection. A Thorian engineer fleeing corporate slavery. A Velkan pair escaping arranged marriage to rival clans. A Zephyrite scientist who had refused to weaponize his research. Each brought their own skills and their own trauma. Each found acceptance in the mountain community. The humans helped more than Yuna had dared hope. Jinwoo taught combat tactics to those who needed to defend themselves. Quan shared his knowledge of Earth survival skills. Taemin, with his quiet patience, became an unofficial counselor for refugees struggling with their pasts. Hari expanded her bookstore to include a small school, teaching refugees about human culture and language. The local government remained blissfully unaware, thanks to careful planning and Jinwoo's connections. As far as official records showed, Doyen had simply expanded his mountain guide business and hired some staff with unusual skin conditions. In a world where people dyed their hair blue and wore colored contacts, the refugees could pass as eccentric humans if they stayed careful. But it was Doyen who made the real difference. He moved through the community like a gentle wind, healing injuries, settling disputes, making people laugh with his terrible jokes. He treated every refugee as a person first, alien second. Under his guidance, the sanctuary became more than just a hiding place. It became a home. Yuna watched him one afternoon as he helped Lyra's young son learn to ride a bicycle. The child, who had known only war camps before coming to Earth, laughed with pure joy as Doyen ran alongside him, hands ready to catch if he fell. You have done something remarkable here, a voice said beside her. Yuna turned to find Hari watching the same scene, a soft smile on her face. We have done it, Yuna corrected. I could not have built this alone. True, Hari agreed. But it started with you, with your courage to accept help and your choice to offer it to others. That is powerful, Yuna. The sanctuary was not without challenges. Food supplies ran tight sometimes. Cultural misunderstandings led to arguments. A Korthan and a Velkan nearly came to blows over some historical conflict between their peoples until Yuna separated them and made them work together on building a new shelter. By the end of the day, They were laughing together over shared exhaustion. "It is strange," Lyra commented one evening as they gathered for the communal meal that had become tradition. "Back home, I was taught that other species were enemies or competitors, but here we are just people trying to live. That is humanity's gift," said Koreth, the Zephyrite scientist. His people were known for their logic and lack of emotion, but even he had softened during his time on Earth. "They see past species and allegiance. They judge based on actions and character. It is revolutionary." Security remained a constant concern. Twice more bounty hunters had approached the mountains. Both times, the community had rallied together, no longer just Yuna and a few human soldiers, but a coordinated defense force of various species working in harmony. The hunters had retreated quickly, surprised by the organized resistance. After the second attack, Yuna made a decision. Using technology salvaged from captured equipment and Koreth's scientific knowledge, she broadcast a message into the refugee networks. Not coordinates or specific locations, but a simple statement. "To all who are lost, betrayed, or fleeing. To those who chose conscience over duty. Earth offers sanctuary. The blue planet. The third from its sun. Seek the mountains of the eastern lands. Come careful. Come quiet. But come. You are not alone." The message spread, and more came. 8 months after the battle, as spring returned to the mountains again, Yuna and Doyen stood on the porch of their cabin. It was early morning, the sun just beginning to paint the valley gold. Below them, the sanctuary was coming to life. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Children of 3 different species played together near the stream. Adults moved between buildings, going about daily tasks, building lives. "Do you ever regret it?" Doyun asked quietly. "Your old life, being a warrior, the honor and glory of the Empire." Yuna considered the question. Once, she had defined herself entirely by her military service, her skills, her loyalty, her willingness to die for the Empire. All of that was gone now. She was a fugitive, a traitor by her people's standards. She would never be honored in Kael'tar history. Her name would be remembered only as a cautionary tale about warriors who forgot their place. "No," she said finally, with absolute certainty. "I do not regret any of it. Everything I lost led me here, to you, to this." She gestured at the valley below. "I spent my whole life fighting for an empire that never cared about me as a person. Now I am building something real with people who do. That is worth more than all the medals and glory in the galaxy." Doyen put his arm around her waist, pulling her close. "When you first crashed here, if someone had told me I would fall in love with an alien warrior and start a refugee sanctuary, I would have thought they were insane." "Would you change it if you could?" Yuna asked. "Not a single moment," Doyen replied. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "Yuna, I have been thinking. In human culture, when 2 people love each other and want to spend their lives together, they make a formal commitment. A marriage. I know it is probably not something your people do, but—" "Yes," Yuna interrupted, her heart suddenly racing. "Whatever you are asking, the answer is yes." Doyen laughed, joy bright in his eyes. "I have not finished asking yet. I do not need you to finish. Yes, Doyen. Yes to marriage. Yes to building a life together. Yes to forever if you will have me." He kissed her then, deep and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling like fools. "We should probably tell the others," Doyen said. "Hari will want to organize a ceremony. She has been waiting for this." "She knew before we did," Yuna said with a laugh. "She told me weeks ago that you were working up the courage to ask." They walked down to the valley together, hand in hand. The community gathered as word spread of the engagement. Congratulations came in multiple languages. Lyra's son presented them with a flower crown he had woven, declaring that all Earth brides wore flowers. Koreth offered a mathematical proof of relationship compatibility that made everyone laugh even though no one understood it. Harry hugged Yuna tightly. "I am so happy for you both," she said. "You deserve every bit of joy." The wedding was held 1 month later, at the peak of spring. They married according to both human and Kael'tar customs, creating a new tradition that blended both cultures. Hari officiated, having gotten certified online specifically for this purpose. Jinwoo, Quan, and Taemin stood as witnesses. Every member of the sanctuary attended, a gathering of species who should have been enemies, but were now family. Yuna wore, simple white, the human tradition, with silver accents honoring her heritage. Doyeon wore traditional Korean clothing that Hari had helped him select. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promising to stand together through whatever the universe threw at them. "I was a warrior without purpose," Yuna said, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "You gave me a reason to fight that was not about duty or obedience, but about love and choice. You are my home, Doyeon, today and always." "I was a man hiding from his past," Doyeon replied. "You showed me that redemption is possible, that our mistakes do not define us. You are my courage, Yuna, today and always." They sealed their vows with a kiss as the crowd erupted in cheers. Music played, a fusion of human and alien instruments creating something entirely new. Food was shared, stories told, laughter echoing through the mountains. As the celebration continued into the evening, Yuna found a quiet moment to look up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Empire continued its expansion. Wars raged. People suffered under tyranny. The galaxy turned, indifferent to individual pain. But here, on this small blue planet in these mountains, something different was happening. People from different worlds were learning to live together.